No one said a word to her, but somehow everyone told her she didn't belong. The moment she stepped into the cafe, the noise didn't stop, but something else did. Conversations lowered just enough, eyes lifted just enough, and in that quiet, invisible shift, she understood something was wrong. Not loudly, not openly, but deeply. No one said a word to her, yet somehow everyone had already decided she didn't belong. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet power of human connection, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Because stories like this remind us what the world could be, if we chose compassion. She stood there for a few seconds too long, her hands gently clutching the strap of her worn handbag. The cafe was warm, softly lit, filled with the comforting aroma of fresh coffee and baked bread. It should have felt safe, it should have felt welcoming. But instead, it felt like standing in a room where every chair had already been claimed, without anyone actually saying so. She walked slowly toward an empty table by the window. Her steps were careful, almost apologetic, as if she were asking permission with every movement. Just as she reached for the chair, a waitress appeared beside her, polite but firm. There was a quiet explanation, something about reservations, about the table being unavailable. The woman nodded, even though she had clearly seen it empty just moments ago. She didn't argue, she simply stepped back. Another table caught her eye. This time, before she could even approach, a couple seated nearby exchanged glances, their expressions tightening ever so slightly. It was subtle, but it was enough. The kind of subtle that cuts deeper than open rejection. She turned away before anyone could say anything else. Minutes passed, but they felt longer. She remained standing near the entrance, pretending to check her phone, pretending she was waiting for someone. But no one was coming, and slowly the weight of it all began to settle in. The quiet humiliation, the silent judgment, the invisible barrier that no one acknowledged, yet everyone seemed to enforce. Her clothes were clean but simple, her shoes slightly worn, her face tired in a way that spoke of long days and longer nights. She wasn't loud, she wasn't disruptive, but she carried something heavier than that, something people often misread: loneliness. Across the cafe, a man sat at a table with his young daughter. He had noticed her the moment she walked in, not because she stood out, but because she tried so hard not to. There was something in the way she held herself, something fragile yet dignified, like someone who had learned to expect less from the world but still hoped for more. His daughter, no older than 6, noticed it too. Children often do. She tugged gently at his sleeve, whispering something, her small eyes glancing toward the woman near the door. The man followed her gaze, and for a moment he hesitated, not out of doubt, but because he understood what stepping in would mean. It would draw attention. It would challenge the unspoken agreement in the room. But then he looked at his daughter again, and that was enough. He raised his hand slightly, catching the woman's attention. At first she looked behind her, unsure if he meant someone else. When she realized he didn't, she seemed startled, almost hesitant to respond. He gave a small, reassuring nod, gesturing toward the empty chair at his table. It wasn't grand, it wasn't dramatic, but in that moment, it meant everything. She approached slowly, unsure if this was real or some kind of misunderstanding. He smiled, not out of obligation but with genuine warmth, and motioned again for her to sit. His daughter beamed at her, shifting slightly to make space, her innocence untouched by the quiet judgments of the room. The woman sat down carefully, as if afraid the moment might disappear if she moved too quickly. For the first time since she entered the cafe, her shoulders relaxed. What followed wasn't loud or extraordinary. It wasn't filled with dramatic speeches or sudden revelations. It was simple, gentle, human. The man introduced himself with quiet ease, his daughter asking small, curious questions in between bites of her dessert. The woman answered softly, her voice carrying both hesitation and relief. Slowly, the tension in her expression began to fade. The cafe didn't change, the people didn't suddenly become kinder, but something shifted anyway, because kindness, when it's real, doesn't need permission from the room. As the minutes passed, pieces of her story surfaced, not in a structured way, but in fragments, enough to understand that life hadn't been easy, that she had been carrying more than most people could see, that sometimes all it takes is one moment of exclusion to remind someone how alone they truly are, And sometimes, all it takes is one moment of inclusion to change that. The man didn't ask too many questions. He didn't try to fix anything. He simply listened. And in doing so, he gave her something rare, the feeling of being seen without being judged. His daughter laughed at something small, and for the first time the woman laughed too. It was soft, almost unfamiliar, as if it had been a while since it last came naturally. Other customers noticed. Some looked away, some watched quietly. But no one said anything. Because moments like this don't need approval. They don't ask for it, they just exist. Time moved differently at that table. What started as an uncomfortable silence turned into something warm, something unexpectedly comforting. The woman who had once stood near the entrance, unsure of where she belonged, was now part of something, even if just for a little while. And sometimes, a little while is enough to remind someone that they matter. As they finished their coffee, the man's daughter drew something on a napkin and handed it to the woman. A simple drawing, uneven lines, bright imagination. The woman looked at it for a long moment, her eyes softening in a way that words couldn't explain. She thanked them, not just politely but deeply, not just for the seat, but for the moment, for the kindness, for the reminder that the world isn't always as cold as it sometimes feels. If this story is touching your heart, don't just watch silently. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and let us know in the comments. Have you ever experienced a moment of unexpected kindness like this? And before we reach the end, here's something special. Comment the word kindness below if you believe small acts can change someone's life. When she finally stood to leave, she looked different. Not completely changed, not magically healed, but lighter. As if the invisible weight she carried had shifted, even if just a little. The cafe door opened again. This time, it didn't feel like a barrier, it felt like a passage. She stepped outside into the cool air, holding on to that small, fleeting moment of connection. And as she walked away, something within her felt stronger than before. Not because the world had suddenly become kinder, but because someone, somewhere, had chosen to be. Back inside, the man watched her leave, his daughter resting her head gently against his arm. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Because some lessons are not spoken, they are lived. And in that quiet cafe on an ordinary day, something extraordinary had happened. Not loud, not dramatic, but real. A reminder that kindness doesn't require wealth, status, or perfection. Just willingness. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough to change everything.